Nothing is free, Goel, Jaina Praudmur said. Your knowledge and skills were bought at a cost. The orc you left behind in your place has done much harm in your absence. If I have heard about what's going on in Orgrimmar and Ashenvale, surely you must have. Goel's mane, which had been deeply peaceful, now looked troubled. I have heard, of course. And you do nothing? I have another path, he said. You have seen the results of that path. A threat that... Goel, I hear this, but that task is now over. Garrosh is stirring up trouble between the Alliance and the Horde. Trouble that didn't exist before he started it. I can understand if you do not wish to undermine him publicly, but perhaps you and I can work together. Form a summit of sorts. Ask Bane to join us. I know he has no love for what Garrosh is striving for. I could speak to Varian. As of late, he seems to be more reachable. Everyone respects you, even the Alliance, Goel. You have earned that respect because of your actions. Garrosh has earned nothing but mistrust and hatred because of his. She indicated her cloak, which had been blown about with the wind he had sent to bear her to shore. You think you can control the winds as a shaman, but the winds of war are blowing. And if we do not stop Garrosh now, many innocents will pay for our hesitation. And that is just a small portion of what's in store for you in the new World of Warcraft book, Jaina Praudmur, Tides of War. And today, we're lucky enough to be joined by its author. If you're a WoW fan, you know her as the author behind books like Thrall, Twilight of the Aspects, The Shattering, Arthas, as well as countless other sci-fi novels and fantasy novels, including stuff for Star Wars and Star Trek. It is a real honor to sit down and talk to you today about your newest, which is Jaina, Tides of War. Kристи Golden, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Oh, my pleasure.
So, I have a lot of questions, and I know a lot of fans do as well. But I think before we get into the actual book, I just had an overall general question. You're essentially, I guess, the bookends of the Cataclysm storyline. There's the Shattering at the beginning, and now there's Jaina, which is the period afterwards. Essentially, how does it feel to be that person who is framing the story arc of the Cataclysm storyline for WoW?
It's very exciting, and it's a real honor to be able to do this. There was a point where we were talking about a trilogy, and I think that since kind of morphed into these 3 books, which are not a trilogy per se, but as you have mentioned, it did kind of kick it off. It's the prelude to Cataclysm, is the subtitle of Shattering, and we are definitely gearing up for the next expansion with this, and with Thrall, we covered one of the major aspects in the overarching storyline. So yeah, actually, I have been on the scene, as it were, for most of this.
And that's what I think is so great, because of your involvement with all the stories so far wrapping around Cataclysm and the help of the lore team and everyone who came together to tell these stories. It flows very well. So I think that's actually pretty evident in the newest book, which starts out answering a very simple question that I know a lot of people had, and it's literally in the first chapter, and that is, what happens to the dragon flights immediately after the aspects lose their powers? Which I thought was kind of a big question that we didn't really get an answer to, and immediately in like chapter 1, it's like, here you go, here's your answers, and I thought that was a terrific addition. What do you think you can share from that? Because I don't want to give away too much of what happens, but it's safe to say that after the aspects lose their powers, a lot happens to the dragon flights. Can you go into that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a period of great, profound change, and I think, thinking it over, we are seeing the change from the dragon flight as a whole, the aspect as a symbol, to a personalization. For instance, Alexstrasza is not an aspect, but she is still a person. She is still herself. Still has her memories. She still has, if not the ability, she is still who she is. And that's kind of the theme running through this book is what happens when all the big trappings are taken away. And who are you at your core? Who are you without the title? Who are you without an ability? Who are you without a place in the world? Who are you when all the things that you have used externally to define you are gone. Who is at the center, who is left. And I think that's true for the dragonflights and the dragons as individuals, as it is for Jaina.
And of course, Jayna Praudmur is the title character of this book, and the story sort of revolves around her and, as you said, her struggle to be heard in a world that just doesn't want to hear anything from her. Was this a storyline that was something that was brewing for a while that needed to be told? How did this come about, the inclusion of a Jayna Praudmur story?
Well, Jaina has always been the symbol of the voice of reason. She has always been working for peace and unity, and, we are greater together than we are at each other's throats. And, for a time, it was absolutely right. They would have Azeroth would have fallen to the Burning Legion had she and Thrall not joined forces. And so she's seen that, and she knows it can work. But she's been drowned out by the drums of war, as it were. And events are moving to the point where there's just really no place for a peacemaker right now. There's more urgent things, and she's caught in the middle of that.
I thought it was fairly interesting when Jaina and Thrall meet early on in the book. It seems as though he, as a character, has transformed. I don't know if it's by what he's done through the Cataclysm storyline or all the different things he's been through. But as a character, he seems sort of, I don't want to say aloof, but like the old wise sensei who knows very important truths, but it's such a pain to hear him say them because it's as if he doesn't understand what's going on in the world because he sees a bigger picture. And can you talk about that relationship between Jaina and Thrall now, where he's sort of like, yeah, I understand you're having a lot of problems, but there's a lot more going on than just a battle between the Horde and Alliance.
Yes, and I think that's difficult for Jaina to comprehend because she has not taken the journey that Thrall has. Thrall has gone from putting aside the mantle of responsibility for the Horde to taking on a mantle of responsibility for the Earth. And he has found his life mate, which has, given him a new perspective on things. And he is seeing the bigger picture, and he is working with the bigger picture, and he has flown with the aspects. And so he's further down his path, and Jaina is down hers. And you can't see what lies ahead. You can't see how you're going to grow. You just see where you are right now. And where he is and where Jaina are on two very different points of the map.
One of the major things that I thought this book, I guess maybe an ongoing theme, although a lot of the characters seem to say, like, I am not this, but I couldn't help but think that this was sort of an overall theme, and that was helplessness. A lot of major characters are reintroduced in this book. For example, even minor characters like Gallywix, who just disappears in the Cataclysm game, is back now, and he's running around doing stuff for the Horde, and it reintroduces the struggle between Garrosh and the other leaders of the Horde, and how they see each other. It's Kalikos in his Dragonflight, and Jaina as well. And so I just wrote down, like, as I was reading it, all the different themes of just helplessness. Like, Kalik feels he's completely failed his flight, and he's helpless to do anything to help to keep them going. Jaina feels completely helpless and trying to get the Horde and the Alliance to see reason with each other. Bane is stuck between wanting to stand up to this war chief who is hell-bent on just destruction, but he can't because he has to look out for his people. Can you talk more about the theme of this helplessness and how it plays a role into the book and then going into the future of the Warcraft storyline?
Well, I think we also saw this with Thrall in Twilight of the Aspects. He felt very helpless. He wanted to do things and he couldn't do things, and he did not. And he had to go on, a literal journey to find himself. And I think everybody feels this way. There are points in our lives where we are helpless, where we can't seem to climb out of the pit, where we can't seem to move forward. And that's the time where you have to really take a good look at yourself and your situation and try and reframe. You might have been, these characters might have been helpless because their old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. and you have to find a new way. If you have changed, if you've lost your certain abilities, well, you can't do things the way you used to. You have to find a different way to do it. You have to find a different way to look at it. You have to find what is important to you now, as opposed to what is important to you before, and what might be important to you later. And it's all about reevaluating and reassessing and seeing where you are and looking at things hard and seeing the ugliness there as well as the beauty, and being able to assess that and realistically and properly and move forward from a place of knowledge.
Speaking of a place of knowledge, Dalaran plays a see what I did there? So stupid.
I did.
Dalaran plays a major role in this book because Jaina sort of has a struggle, and it involves magic. And I don't really want to spoil too much, but you reintroduce the character of Ronan again in Cataclysm. A lot of fans were like, "Where is he? Why isn't he involved?" And can you talk a little bit about what he's been up to and sort of what role he plays in this book?
Ronan was chosen because he was a bit of an iconoclast. And to me, I kind of missed seeing him being more involved in game. I have not gone past 75, so I have not seen a lot of the end game content. I need to rectify that. But the world's changing. The world's changing, and it's, again, this is a theme that just runs throughout this book is what do you do when your world has changed and the old ways of doing things aren't working anymore? And he becomes much more involved, and he reaches out to Jaina and is there to help Jaina throughout this book as well. And the whole issue with the Kirin and Jaina has a little apprentice whom I loved writing for, and she's a Dalaran mage, and so there's definitely, Dalaran has a more of a presence in this book than I think it might have in other books.
Let's move from Dalaran to sort of I assume it's kind of a theme that you guys were going for when the lore was sort of pieced together on how to tell this story, but the book is essentially divided into three sort of storylines. There's the Kalikos and his storyline, and then there's the Jaina storyline with Theramore, and then there's the inner workings of the Horde and how that works. And when it comes to the Horde, it seemed to me that it sort of had a World War II Nazi Germany vibe, and more along the lines of I'm trying to think of a better example, but the movie Valkyrie, where the whole point was the guys who were trying to do Operation Valkyrie were trying to show the world not all of us are like Hitler. And I think in this case, Bane is sort of has that, I want everyone to know, like Bane and Vol'jin want everyone to know, like, we aren't all like Garrosh is. Was that sort of what you were going for here? Yes. And I had already set up Bane in The Shattering as kind of the voice of reason against Garrosh. And so it was very logical to utilize him in this capacity. And it was also good to bring Vol'jin in a little bit. He needs a little bit of airtime. And so, what do you do? What do you do in a society where if you turn against your leader, whom you have sworn fealty to, he's going to come and pretty much exterminate your people? You have to protect your people. You have to make compromises. You have to do some things that you don't necessarily like to do. But what do you do when that starts eating at your soul? Do you turn traitor? Do you not do things? Do you accidentally do a few things? How do you live with yourself, and how do you keep your people safe? It's quite a gray area. So he had a lot of challenges. And especially when it comes to what I assume is sort of like an orcish Gestapo,
yes.
Yeah, Garrosh has a group of guys who essentially silence any dissenters. I thought that was a really cool addition to the story. When you were writing those characters, did you have anything in mind when you were trying to sort of, because there's a scene, for example, early on with a poor lowly mushroom farmer who gets roughed up a bit. Was there anything you were thinking about when you wrote that part of the story?
I don't think it was deliberately crafted to say, I didn't think I sat down and say, hey, these guys are going to be Nazis and this is the Gestapo. I think it's too common a story that a leader steps into a void and kind of starts believing his own press, and then not liking it when people say anything against him, and then he just kind of surrounds himself with people that he knows are going to take care of those messy things, and he doesn't even have to know about it. And I think that's what's going on here. And yeah, definitely the poor mushroom farmer, and later on the poor ingoers.
Yes.
Pay the price for that. So yeah, it's just to demonstrate how detached he is from what his people really think, and how he just doesn't want to listen because he thinks he's got a good idea, and he surrounded himself with bad advisors who are pretty much playing him like a fiddle. So yeah.
I've always wondered, since you've written a lot of the character of Garrosh, did you always plan to take him from what essentially was like a weakling in Nagrand to sort of this character who is way into himself and his own ego, and believes that he is, just the next coming of the great orcish war chief who's going to take over everything? Because really his character has transformed a lot, and most of that transformation, I think, comes from the books that you've helped write about his transformation.
Well, he really didn't have, I don't think that Garrosh has a very strong sense of self. He looked to his father and his heritage, and saw negative things, and then felt ashamed to be an orc. And then Thrall comes along and says, no, actually your dad did some pretty amazing things. And then that made it okay for him to be proud to be an orc. And then because he was proud to be an orc, he wanted everybody to be proud to be orcs. And his own personal contributions, which is how well he fought, and the appreciation of honor among the Horde, really kind of got slapped down when he ended up accidentally killing Cairn through the sneakiest method imaginable. And after that, I don't think he knows who he is, and he looks to others to tell him who he is. And he looked to Thrall to tell him who he was, and he looked to the battles. If I'm good at battle, then I will be this, and then if I kill Cairn in battle, I will be this. But no, that didn't work out well, and so now he's got himself surrounded by not necessarily sycophants, because they're far too dangerous for that, but some very powerful people who are telling him exactly what he wants to hear, and making sure he doesn't hear what he doesn't want to hear. And so he is building his own self-esteem and what he thinks to be right for the Horde on other people's notions of what is right for the Horde.
It seems like, on the other end, Jaina as well may not really know what her role or place is, because she sort of has this thing as well, where she believes her place is between the Horde and Alliance, yet everyone else around her is like, are you sure that's where you're supposed to be? And I think that was a sort of a theme in the book as well, where it's her finding herself. Just like Garrosh, who doesn't necessarily know who he is, he's trying to find himself through, I'm going to leave a mark on the world, this is what I'm going to do. And I think she is sort of the peace end of that, like, I'm going to be the one to bring the Horde and the Alliance together.
Very similar. Very similar. She's not recognizing that the world's changed. And she's kind of holding fast to her idea until the world changes so brutally and so swiftly that she has no choice but to deal with it. And it racks her down to her core. It takes away everything that she believed. It takes away everything she's loved, everything she's struggled for and worked for. And, she's completely stripped of all of that, and she's down to just what is her true essence. And that's what she needs to discover in this book. Who is Jaina Praudmur?
And there is a major event that occurs in this book.
I will say that this was such a major plot point. It's not only in the book, it's going to be in the game, and there's going to be a great deal of interweaving between book and game. I worked very, very hard with the quest designers so that everything I depict in the book is in the game. And you actually get to interact. There's a Horde and Alliance class, and you get to interact with these main characters as you do in the book. There's a scene where it says Jaina turns to her friends, in the book, and those are you. Those are player characters. And so there's going to be, I believe, the closest interweaving of game and book that we have seen yet.
So I definitely don't want to spoil the minor points and also the really intricate detailed plots, but I think it's safe to say everyone at this point, since Blizzard has released the information, that Theramore is destroyed. And I don't want to spoil why or how or what happens, because that will be in game and it'll be really fun to be a part of or read in the book. But with such a major event happening, does this affect anything else down the line story-wise? Is there any sort of future events that you might be able to hint at that would occur in a book and or in game?
I really don't know. I mean, this is a huge change. I think it would have to have all kinds of repercussions, like a giant rock being thrown into a pond. But I don't know, outside of the book, I don't know of any particular repercussions that are coming.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the book was there were small moments where characters who don't really get a lot of screen time in the game or actually in novels, but are very popular with the fans. For example, Sylvanas or the just Blood Elf race in general. Something I really liked was the fact that they acknowledged that even though Garrosh is going to go around and do whatever he wants to do, they're like, yeah, but we're on the other continent with these guys who are probably going to come get us. Being a member of the Horde myself, I loved the fact that the different discussions between the characters of the Horde really played out very well in a way that sort of was like, everyone's represented here. And I thought that was terrific, especially in a book where, for the most part, it's about, I thought it was great in a book that is essentially about Jaina Praudmur and her struggle to sort of deal with what's happening around her. But at the same time, the Horde wasn't just, the bad guys. There was a lot going on in that story that I thought was well written and definitely played out very well.
Well, this has always been, I think, a hallmark of my work, is I believe that people are individuals. And so I'm never going to say the Horde is always all bad or the Alliance is always all good or vice versa, because it's the individuals. And, we see Bane and we see Anduin and we see Jaina and we see Thrall and we see all these other characters, and they all have their own opinions and they all have their own angles and their needs and what they want to see happen. And they're not always going to agree on everything all the time.
Speaking of characters and what they want to happen, I have two characters in mind. Kalikos and Jaina have sort of a... I don't want to give away too much, but is it safe to say there's a little something there?
That I had a great time writing that, because I like both characters individually. And they are both going through such a huge thing. Again, the theme of this book seems to be, recovering identity after loss. And they're both struggling through it, and they're both really nice people. They'd be good company to hang out with. And it was really fun to get to work with them and see their similarities and differences and see, what could happen when those two characters were put together. So, yeah, I enjoyed that.
They complement each other very well, and as a team, I thought were pretty terrific. So, in the end, this book, really, even though it starts off the Pandaria storyline, it's actually sort of the final chapter of Cataclysm. Is there anything here that you think we should take away from the entire Cataclysm story arc that sort of sums up what we can expect in the future, or any key themes from this past expansion that you feel we should really take away from it?
The thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question is that nothing stays the same. Everything changes. And those who survive are those who learn to find where they are, their role in the new world, and the role in their lives when things are different, when things are changed. And those are the people who survive. Those who can adapt to the changes and who can grow and not stay locked into a single mindset or a single place. Because the Cataclysm started with a mammoth upheaval, and